My name's Emma Watton and I work at Lancaster University Management School. I'm the Programme Director of our Executive MBA programme, which runs here in the UK and also in Malaysia and Ghana. My role at Lancaster is really to oversee the programme. I coordinate all the aspects of, for example, teachers and tutors on the programme, student experience, recruitment to the programme, making sure that the students are able to complete, looking at things like career opportunities for them, alumni engagement, so a whole range of things. And I have to have a really strong set of skills around networking, both internally with different aspects of the university and also externally with stakeholders, also partners for our international programs and the organisations where we recruit our students from. I started work over 30 years ago now, and back in those days I wanted to be a bank manager. So I left school and I studied my Chartered Institute of Banking qualifications, which was the qualification you needed to become a bank manager. And so by the age of 28, I was a bank manager in the Yorkshire area. And I had a portfolio of business customers, and they were small businesses. And I was their bank manager for all of their day-to-day banking needs. So that career, I suppose now when I look back on it, really gave me a strong foundation in a range of business skills. And so I carried on doing that, and I was in banking for 15 years. And then I kind of was in my early 30s and I thought, well, maybe I want to do something else. So for about 4 or 5 years, I became self-employed and I was a consultant to the financial services industry. And again, that was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. I did a lot of leadership development training for other financial services staff, covered different areas of the country, different organisations, really liked it. And then I had a bit of a shift. So I moved up to the Lake District, which is where I live now. And a lot of my work was in different parts of the country. And I got a little bit tired of travelling and living out of a hotel room. And then I saw a part-time job come up at the University of Central Lancashire, and it was a project manager role on a European funded project. And so I applied for that, and I did a couple of projects that were along those lines. And then I took a role at the University of Cumbria, and that was in 2007. Again, initially I worked on a European funded project, and the projects were working with small businesses. And so it fitted my skills as a bank manager working in the small business sector. So that was really helpful. And then I suppose the transition point for me in terms of getting into a more senior role was I did the maternity leave cover for a colleague at the University of Cumbria, and she was the faculty enterprise manager. So that role was a much more senior role, overseeing 14 staff and actually ensuring that all of those projects that were running through those staff were delivered on time and on budget. So quite a lot of responsibility. I reported to the dean, and so I did that for a year. And then what I did, when the lady came back from her maternity leave, we actually did the role as a job share. And in fact, I've done a piece of research with that lady into the benefits of job sharing for women to get into senior leadership roles. And so that became quite a significant change for me. And then just over 6 years ago, I moved to Lancaster University, and my role now is a little bit different. So I'd say it's a sort of hybrid role between some aspects of teaching, but also still professional services in terms of managing the programme that I look after. I absolutely love the role that I do now, and I often think if what we can do through our teaching is to make a small difference to perhaps an individual and the way they work, then the longer term benefit to not only their role, their organisation, the communities and societies in which they live, will be improved. So to perhaps give you an example, I work as a guest lecturer on a module at Lancaster called Future Global Leaders, and all of our undergraduate students, irrespective of which subject they do at the management school, they all take that module. And so inspiring them to perhaps look at leadership from a different perspective and the difference that they can make make from not necessarily having a formal role, but just through whatever role they've got, we can all do small everyday acts of leadership. And to me, that then makes a difference. And they will at some point manage people in the future, and so what you set in stone now in further down the line will hopefully make a difference. So for me, that's what being part of the community at Lancaster means, the difference that we can make for future generations. Really fortunate in my career in higher education to be given some quite unique opportunities, I feel. And for me, it's always about embracing some of those opportunities. They might not necessarily seem a perfect fit at the time, but I'm a great believer in saying yes and seeing where it goes. So when I was at the University of Cumbria, we had a new partnership, and it was to develop an online MBA. And it was a completely new initiative. And because I hadn't done an undergraduate degree, I'd gone to do my banking qualifications, I felt slightly that I'd missed out a little bit. So they wanted somebody to be a sort of dummy student on this program. So I volunteered. So I did an online MBA. I would probably have been late 30s, early 40s when I did that. And it was a massive thing for me to undertake it, but it became, really rewarding. And now I feel the role that I have as the program director of the Executive MBA, I feel I can empathise with students who are returning to study, as mature students. They're working full-time, studying part-time. That's exactly what I did. So I think that was a really good opportunity for me. I'm also now doing my PhD, and that's come about obviously because of the role that I've got at Lancaster, and it's really important to me to continually develop myself. So that's been really important. Also at Lancaster, you're really encouraged to go to conferences. So I've been to professional services conferences. I've also been to academic conferences, and that's a really good way to get to know good practice that's happening in the sector. So I think that's a really rich opportunity as well. So I just try and embrace as many opportunities as I can, really, just to kind of see what else is out there. So I suppose some highlights for me is I quite often volunteer to mentor students. So this year, for example, in the current crisis that we have with the COVID-19 situation, our full-time MBA students are all working online, and that's quite a new experience for them. So last week a call was put out for some volunteer mentors to work with small groups of students over the next few months to perhaps act as a point of contact for them if they're unsure about something or they just want to talk to someone. So I volunteered to do that. I've also worked with Advanced HE, which is one of the HE bodies in the UK and abroad, and I've started working with them, doing some sessions on some of their webinars. So there was one about leading with humanity, how we can get more humanity into the HE sector. So I participated in that one probably about a month ago. And so I think those are some of the opportunities that you get when you work in higher education. It's always interesting. You don't quite know where some of these opportunities might come from. And I think the great thing about, for example, having a populated LinkedIn profile and putting up links for things that are going on, I think that's somehow sometimes how people find you. And so those sorts of things, they do take a little bit of time, but I think they're important in terms of your career and being visible. I suppose for me, I've been working in both the private sector, the public sector, and I've also been self-employed. So I have seen quite a few different ways of working, I suppose. I'm also a guest lecturer at the Centre for Humanitarian Leadership. So that's working with organisations like Save the Children, the Red Cross. So a very altruistic set of organisations there. And to me, I think there's some similarities and differences between them. So this is a sort of simplified, version really, but I think the private sector is much more fast-paced. You've got perhaps a very different way of working. Quite often you have things like key performance indicators. It's a sort of maybe a short-term view in terms of ways of working. Public sector obviously is quite different. When I first went into HE, I really, found it quite amazing that you had quite a few levels of approval to go through, for example, to make a change on something, whereas in the private sector that would have been, quite a straightforward process. So things like that seemed quite different. I would say it probably took me about a year of working in a university setting to sort of make that adjustment. So yeah, I think now at the point where I am in my career, I don't envisage changing again. I think I'm going to stay with HE certainly for the next 10 years or so. That will almost get me to retirement. So I can't see myself changing, because I think for me at the moment it really offers me the best of both worlds. It's challenging, there's lots of opportunities, but also it feels a really supportive environment in which to be employed, and so for where I am just now, it's a really good fit for me. So at Lancaster, we've got a really nice park style campus. So we're about 3 miles outside of the city, but that means there's a lot of green space. So we have a woodland trail. So quite often I'll go for a walk at lunchtime with a colleague and we just do the woodland trail walk, which takes about 30 minutes. So that's really nice. We also have some really good sports facilities on campus. And one of the highlights for me at Lancaster is we do a charity triathlon every year in September. And it's a team triathlon. So I can't swim. So that would mean normally I couldn't do a triathlon, but I can either do the running leg or I can do the bicycle leg. And so you get a team together and it's really good fun. We have staff doing it, we have students doing it. And every year we raise about £10,000 for the local hospice. So that's a great thing to do on campus. We also have concerts. So I've been to music concerts on campus. I've also been to some of the talks with guest speakers that we have. So I went to a really interesting talk a few months ago by William Hague, and he was talking about artificial intelligence and what that might mean to society. So it was very different to the William Hague that you see on, when he was a politician on the news, but, a really good opportunity just to hear somebody like that speak. So I think those are sort of some of the things that stand out for me as opportunities. Being on campus, sort of, you get the best of both worlds. It's almost, like being a permanent student, but as a member of staff, you can access these opportunities as well. It's a really tricky question, just to single one thing out. I've been quite lucky. So the work that I did at the University of Cumbria was recognised through a Vice-Chancellor's Award. So that was really quite nice to get recognition for something like that. So there's things like that on the one hand, but then on the other hand, for example, just having an email from a student that maybe has something's happened to them, career-wise or something like that, and they connect back with you. It can be 2 or 3 years later and they send you an email and they say, oh, thanks so much for what you did and this is what it means to me and this is what I've now done. Those moments can be really significant as well. And just last weekend, I had an email from a student in Ghana and she'd sent me some photos of a little girl that was born in January, because I'd kept in touch with her and I wanted to know how she was doing, and she sent me some baby photos of her daughter, and those sort of things are the things for me that become highlights. So actually it's some of the sort of more day-to-day things that really help you think what you do makes a difference and means you're up ready to go the next day for another day's worth of work.